I put a lot of time and effort into it only to find that, actually it didn't land. And that, as a single parent with 2 kids, like, that was driving me crazy. That was really, really starting to drive me crazy. And I got to the point where I was going to leave. I just thought, I can't do this anymore. This is going to kill me. Because I knew that if I had a really good brief and I had a committed client, I knew that I could work it to completion. And yeah, I was on the verge of leaving. And then I ended up getting sat with, when I came back from North America, a guy who was one of the only people, I think, or the only person in my firm that was working on a retained basis. And I was fascinated by it, absolutely fascinated, because he wasn't in a market that I wasn't. It wasn't like executive. He wasn't at a different level. Yet he had his clients financially committing to him at the beginning of projects.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of Tokyo Recruiters. I'm Levi. Thank you for being here. This episode taught me a ton about retained search. If you're someone who's in the contingent model, you're probably going to want to see this. There's a wave of retained search that is taking over, especially in a tough market like Japan. I think it could be really valuable. If I were to go back in the industry, I would definitely consider doing retained instead of contingent. So yeah, if you like what Louise is talking about in this episode, then you can use the link in the description or just reach out to her directly and let her know that you saw this podcast with me, and you'll receive 10% off of the course with her. So I will also receive a very small referral bonus for that. So either way, I think that this episode is enlightening and hopefully changes how you're seeing retained search. All right. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Louise. Nice to meet you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, as mentioned, my name's Levi, and I am running this podcast mostly for Tokyo Recruiters. But I wanted to have you onto the podcast because you could be a potentially valuable resource for people, as there's recruiters that are looking to take their business in different directions, some of them into the retained model, but maybe not so sure about what that would look like for them and if it's even possible. If you'd like to introduce yourself and what you're doing, we can get started.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Louise Archer, and I run a firm called Retrain Search, and we teach recruiters how to secure and deliver their work on a retained basis. Some of the people that I teach move from contingent to retained in its entirety, and some people just do more work on a retained basis. But either way, we help people to do that, because often people get frustrated with working on a contingent basis and they don't know how, or like you say, if it's even possible to work in this way. And because I went on that journey myself, I know that it is, and I've kind of fallen into teaching other people. Yeah, sharing what I've learned along the way, really, and having taught quite a few recruiters now in Tokyo. We were talking about them just before. I know that it can be done in the market, in the Tokyo market. So it's just nice to share that with as many people who want to, or, think that maybe they can't. Well, you can, basically.
Awesome. And I want to jump into that, but you kind of alluded to your story. So maybe first of all, you could tell us a little bit about, what brought you into this retained space.
Yeah. So I was looking at your past podcast guests, and it's interesting to hear about how people end up in recruitment. It's never normally, by choice. And I was kind of the same. My mum had a recruitment agency, and I used to help in the summer holidays when I was a teenager, and I kind of got sucked into it. And then after I finished my studies and travels and various other things, I kind of landed back to what I knew and ended up going into recruitment because that was what I knew. My brother does it now too. We both have ended up in recruitment, but it was mainly contingent. Like, I did 15 years of contingent recruitment across, worked in different markets, HR, engineering, more latterly. And it wasn't until I was quite far down the line with my career, and I actually had children, and I was quite good at what I did. I knew my market, I knew my candidates, I knew my clients, I knew the skill sets. It was quite technical. But what was frustrating was I'd be working on stuff, and for no fault of my own, like, the fee wouldn't come in. It was things like the client just decided, we're not going to go down that route, we're going to go down this route, or they accept a spec CV, randomly from another agency, and it was actually completely off piece of what they thought they wanted, or maybe there wasn't actually a position in the first place and they just never told me. And as much as you qualify it, sometimes they are just benchmarking against an internal candidate, and you don't find out until quite far down the line. And I put a lot of time and effort into it, only to find that actually it didn't land. And that, as a single parent with 2 kids, like, that was driving me crazy. That was really, really starting to drive me crazy. And I got to the point where I was going to leave. I just thought, I can't do this anymore. This is going to kill me. Because I knew that if I had a really good brief and I had a committed client, I knew that I could work it to completion. And yeah, I was on the verge of leaving. And then I ended up getting sat with, when I came back from North America, a guy who was one of the only people, I think, or the only person in my firm that was working on a retained basis. The whole rest of the 300 or 400 people were working contingently. And I was fascinated by it, absolutely fascinated, because he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't in a market that I wasn't. It wasn't like executive. He wasn't at a different level. Yet he had his clients financially committing to him at the beginning of projects. And he was applying a process that didn't look like a dark art or anything mysterious. And I mean, I was just lucky enough to sit next to him and kind of begged him to teach me how to do it. But we ended up going through an auditing as a firm and evaluation process for this transaction. And they valued the permanent side of the business quite low, because the majority of the revenue was contingent. It wasn't forecastable, it wasn't predictable. And so the actuals versus the forecasts were often wildly out. So the business had seen what Matt was doing and what I'd kind of started to get interested in, and said, right, if you can shore up this revenue and get it predictable and consistent, we can kind of keep because it was mainly a contract business. We were kind of a smaller sister to the main contract business. And so that's what we got tasked with. And so we were kind of mission turn it retained all of a sudden, when I didn't even know that retain was a thing at the level, kind of 5 minutes earlier. I mean, it was only a few months, but, and so I ended up on this journey of following Matt around, learning, having a go, and it worked basically. And we just converted client after client after client from contingent to retained. And I mean, that sounds easy, right? There's a lot of learning that went in there, and I can share as much or as little as you want me to, in this session or others. And that business now, so we basically converted first the UK and then Europe and then North America, and now their whole perm business is retained. Last time I spoke to the chairman, it's $12.5 million a year in retained revenue. They do nothing contingent at all. And the level of the position that they work on hasn't changed. I think it's gone up slightly, but only naturally, not because we've gone, right, we're not going to do anything junior anymore or mid-level anymore. We're only going to do it. That isn't what happened. It was that we were converting the same work, but into a financially committed model. Wow. And since then, I was then fascinated with what happens under the bonnet of real search firms. I don't know whether you have executive, any of the Shreks, the Spencer Stewarts and the Heidrick and Struggles on the podcast, but I was fascinated with what's going on there, with the executive side of stuff. Is it different? Is it the same as what we're doing? And so I went to go and work for an executive search firm and see what's under the bonnet there. And that was fascinating as well. And I learned so many things. I was like, oh my God, we're just playing at it here. We're just kind of, Matt was good, but it was a kind of engaged model rather than a fully executive search retained model. And there are definitely different stages, and there should be, right? Because you don't need an executive search model for a mid-level position. It's overkill. There's too much reporting and it's too detailed. And then I went to go and work for a professional research firm when we did talent mapping and pipelining and insight studies, and that there was no placement fee on that model. So what's the client paying for? It's intelligence and mapping, and that was fascinating as well. So this whole new world opened up that I didn't even know existed, and I fell back in love with what I was doing again, and I have been doing it ever since. Really, I didn't leave the industry, and God, I'm glad I didn't. And what's happened over the past few years is that people who I used to work with at the first business have reached out to me and said, I see what you're doing now, will you help me do that, or will you help our firm do that? And I started doing a bit of just helping people on the side, and then that kind of got bigger, and I ended up people saying, you taught this guy how to do retain, can you teach me how to do it? And so I ended up by accident just kind of developing this way of being able to help other people to do the same thing that I me and Matt had helped the firm do and that I'd kind of done myself. And in COVID, I was asked by a company I was helping to go out and do a firm in Austin in Texas. I'd done their UK Europe team, and I couldn't I couldn't get on the plane. And so they said, would you put like a few videos together so that we can watch them, while we're kind of at home? And I did. And I thought, Jesus, that's a good idea. And as luck would have it, I'd bumped into a girl who was in one of my training sessions that had said to me, this training's incredible. Have you ever thought about putting it on video? My husband's a videographer. I bet he could film it for you. And I was like, this is just like the stars of, what's funny? Have you ever seen that Steve Jobs talk? He does the speech to Stanford University. Have you ever seen that one? It's really good. I couldn't remember. I watched it again yesterday because I couldn't remember what it was that had really hit home for me. And what he basically says is, you can only join the dots looking backwards. You can't join the dots of your life looking forward. You don't know, like as luck would have it, he dropped out of college and he thought he didn't know where his life was going to go. But the fact that he dropped out of college means he dropped into a calligraphy class, which meant that when he did design the first Mac, it had the most beautiful typefaces and fonts that and had he not done that, we probably wouldn't have typefaces or different fonts. And so he says, but you can only look at it, you can only see that looking backwards. And now I look at my journey and it's the same. Like I was like, whoa, all over the place, but actually, looking back into what I've fallen in now, which is helping other people go on the same journey as I did, it feels like the best kind of place to be. So I just kind of recorded everything I was doing and set it up as an online, like you can watch it. And that's just taken off now, like globally, because you can do it from wherever you are. So as we were saying at the start, people like Ryan Shepherd and John Camilleri and Lauren Schoberg and David Sweet and people like that from all areas of the world in Australia and North America have heard or seen something and can have used the training to do the same thing.
That's amazing how it's all lined up and kind of got to this point. I can feel your energy and kind of passion, having come to this point without realizing it, having all the pieces get put together. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Another couple of things that were just coming up for me listening to this. I mean, first of all, you're a great storyteller. Like it was fascinating to just hear you tell this story and also to hear how it affected the business. And you'd think that contract, that's usually what people go to as the stability, right? That's like, okay, we're going to get the stable revenue. And I don't think I've ever thought about retained search as being another one of those ways that you can have some consistent revenue coming in. So that was kind of new for me. And then, amazing to see, I guess, how you've gotten training not only in the kind of ragtag, let's do it ourselves kind of retained way, but also the executive search way. And I definitely have questions about, what does it even mean then? What is exactly that retained search model that you're teaching to people, and how is it different than maybe what you were doing at the start with Matt, or maybe what you thought as a conception of retained search?
Yeah, well, it's funny actually that's where we start in the program, because that was the biggest kind of problem for me. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what retained was. And so for that reason, I would shy away from it. And even we had training, in the early days on how to sell retainers. And we had this American dude come in and say, you got to value your time and, just stand firm. And that didn't work for me. I don't know about you, but that didn't work for me. It didn't mean that the client suddenly wanted to give me money up front.
It sounds like the kind of typical way, if I can just say, like what I think of as when people are like trying to sell a retainer, it's they're really going in and trying to be a bull in a china shop, as it were. And like, I'm going to promise all these things that I'm going to deliver for you and you can trust me. And then most of the time
that
they
didn't
hear that
work
same
for me.
story, right? Okay.
No, it didn't. It really didn't. And what I learned in the first instance from Matt is that it isn't the things that I think I thought it was, like, just getting some money up front, or, doing a bit more headhunting, or maybe getting some money up front and not doing anything different actually, and just doing what you would normally do. And that actually what it is it's a solution to the problem that the contingent model isn't solving. And because basically in a lot of cases that contingent model, I don't knock the contingent model, because in a lot of cases it's fine, it's perfectly adequate. You know, if you've got a low level or an easy to fill or a straightforward hire where there's plenty of talent available, you can stick an advert on, field a few CVs, send a few in for interview, get a fee. Happy days, clients happy, you're happy, candidates happy.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do anything different? There's just no need. Like, as we say, like, you don't need a sledgehammer to crack a walnut, you know. But in many cases, that contingent model just doesn't work, you know. It falls over. It's normally because it's a niche skill set, or it's an awkward location, or it's a really competitive market for the candidates, or it's for whatever reason it's more complex. Then that contingent model falls over for lots of different reasons. Normally it's because contingent recruiters are working on lots of different jobs at the same time, and they're having to spread their time, and they've got to focus on the positions that are most likely to result in a fee, and those ones that are a bit
Mm-hmm.
awkward or aged, or the clients are pain in the ass, or the location's difficult, that tends to go down the list of priorities. And so the client, without realizing it, they think that by putting it out to multiple agencies, they're going to duplicate the effort, but of course they don't. And the exclusive model and exclusivity can help with that particular issue and mean that you can give it more commitment, but it doesn't solve all the other issues that could mean that it doesn't result in a fee, like some other stakeholder getting involved partway through, or the client just going on holiday and not feeding back at crucial times with a candidate that you're going to lose if you don't. And so there are lots of other issues that you need to mitigate in order to solve the problem that the contingent model isn't solving. And basically, the financial commitment from the client enables us to put in place a robust process, mitigating against all of the things that could go wrong, giving us, as near as damn it, a guaranteed result. So that's the mechanics of it, are that the financial commitment allows us to put in place a process which is engineered for that specific role, that specific position. Sometimes it's an executive search process because it is an executive position, and that's what it needs: behavioural profiling and face-to-face interviewing and formal referencing. But more often than not, it's not. It's just a niche position or a difficult location or really competitive. And actually what needs to be put in place is a transparent process where we can show our workings every step of the way, so the client doesn't just say, well, I like that candidate, but I think I just want to see some more, because they've got this perception that there are more.
Mm-hmm.
And working transparently, for example, is one of the ways in which you mitigate that from happening, and you show the client where you've been. It's a bit like that specific element of process. I always think of it a little bit like a maths exam, you know, where you get 1 point for the answer and 9 points for the working out. Yes, they want you to arrive at the right answer, but it's how you got there that makes the difference. And a lot of it is about that in that particular instance. And if you show your client where you've been, which of course you can't do on a contingent basis because you're at risk of them just taking the candidates that you're showing them partway through. So it is about putting in place all the things that you need to mitigate against all the things that could go wrong, making sure that you drive that project to a result, which is why in so many cases, more often than not, I mean, the average fill rate we see on a retained basis is 5%, 95 to 100%, whereas on a contingent basis, it's around that between 15 and early 20s, 22%. So instead of filling 1 in 4, or 1 in 5, you end up filling the vast majority of them. And putting that process together, because you've got that financial commitment, enables you to do that.
I feel like a market like Japan is just perfect because
Yeah, exactly.
so many searches are what you're talking about. They're complex, or the competition for candidates is so high that it makes it so difficult to find those people. And I mean, I never did retain search at all, but the closest that we would do is these exclusive searches. But I think we would function like an executive search firm. I don't know from the inside, but what we would do is we would show our clients who we trusted, you know, they would give us a heads up on a role. We'd come to them with a market map of, okay, here's all the candidates that are in the industry, which ones are you interested in, kind of thing. And we would kind of try to show our work as best as possible, even if it was not exclusive, and show, okay, we reached out to 100 people and 50 said they're not interested for this reason, XYZ. And then for this other, you know, section of people, this is how you could appeal to them, etc. So we did our best to partner, but because there was no financial incentive locking this in, it was always a little sketchy. Like, you wanted to really make sure that it was a client who you really trusted, that was not going to steal that information.
Exactly. I mean, so it's part way there, and honestly, I'm about to do a masterclass on it actually in about 10 days time, which we're sharing on our website and stuff. Because a lot of people get to this stage where they get part way there. Either they do a little bit of it, or they do it in a kind of hybrid fashion and have a go, getting some kind of commitment, or even putting in what they think is a retained process in an exclusive model. But then they get burnt by it, right? Because actually the client, there's nothing to stop the client from just going, yeah, thanks, Levi, but we're not going to do this anymore. We're just going to go somewhere else. And the problem with exclusive is you're then in a worse position, because what you've done is you've put loads of time and energy into it, more time and energy than you would if it was contingent. And then you're still at risk of them going, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. So you've then dropped a load of other stuff that is the opportunity cost of, you could have done the same. It's a real gamble.
Yeah.
With contingency, you're sort of spread betting, whereas with exclusive, you're then, you're going on to win, and then you've got all your eggs kind of in that, much fewer baskets. So it can be worse, as can be taking some financial commitment and then not putting a process in that makes sure that you drive it to a result. That can be worse because you've then got the financial commitment. What if you can't fill it?
That's going to
And if
blow
you've
things
promised
up.
to fill it, and that's the return, because they said, well, what happens if you not fill it? Well, we're going to. If you give us this money, then we're going to fill it, which, by the way, I don't advise. But if you have done that, you're then screwed if you don't, because, what's going to happen to that client relationship? So it's a real dangerous zone, this middle ground, either for you or for your client relationships, or sometimes both. And that's why a lot of people need a bit of help. I could definitely not have done what I've done and been able to do what I've done without learning from the people that have done it before and have a lot of experience. First Matt, who got me kind of to this fairly robust engaged type model and a process there, but then moving into proper retained search and the executive stuff and the insight studies. There's no way I would have been able to do that without learning. And the problem is that there aren't many people that teach it that have actually done it. And that was what was weird to me, right? Why aren't there? This is a really good thing to learn. This is a really good, especially in markets like yours, like in Tokyo and Japan, where it's so difficult. There's so many skills and experiences that are so highly sought after, and not enough of them. And that's the perfect market for a model that you work in committed partnership until you make sure that you reach a result, right? But there aren't enough people showing people why aren't people taught this from the start?
Yeah.
Why if it's possible and this works really well, as people like Ryan and John and Lawrence will testify and tell you, then why don't people get taught it from the start? The reality to that is that you get a few people that go from contingent or recruitment into executive search, but you don't get very many that go the other way around. So you don't get people coming back and going, okay, this is what you do, guys, They go to executive search and then they go off into the sunset, right? And
they're not going to
live
tell
the dream
anyone
and
else
go,
about
ha ha ha, look at me.
Yeah.
I'm doing this now. But they don't then open the books and say, this is how you do it. So it's not very common. And most of the trainers, and certainly the trainer that or possibly even trainers that we had in, weren't executive search practitioners. They hadn't ever done it. They were trainers, and they'd kind of pretty much always been trainers. And that's why they weren't able to teach us the actual detail of it all and why clients buy it and what they buy, because they'd never actually sold it themselves. So it's quite rare. And that's why I guess I've had to look around and go, well, surely someone else is doing this. Why is everyone asking me to do it? Well, actually, no, they're not. And so someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do it. And it turns out that someone, it looks like it's going to be me. So, yeah.
Nice.
That's the message, really. Like, you absolutely can learn it, but for God's sake, get some help with it. Don't expect yourself to know how to do it on your own, because you don't know, what clause, for example, protects you from another stakeholder getting involved partway through, or what part of that agreement stops the client just from going, I think we'll just put a hold on this while we have a think about something else over here. And then you lose the only one or two candidates that they're ever maybe going to actually get. Like, what's going to protect you from that? And you need something to protect you from that, because that is going to stop you from completing on that position. It's the devil with these things is always in the detail. And it's a lot of when you pick up the pieces and look at it that someone gives you, and I encourage you. You can do it. It's not rocket science, but for God's sake, just get a bit of help and get someone to, give you the pieces. You'll look at them and go, oh yeah, oh right, yeah. Oh God, of course you do
Hmm.
that and you do that and you do that. And then it's not difficult once you've got all the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. I think there's a lot of maybe ego or pride also in not wanting to ask for
Maybe.
help. And
Yes. Yeah.
I think maybe that drives some people away from wanting to learn and invest in themselves. But it's
Yeah.
hopefully a changing, because information is so open. You can see other people around you that are doing it and you wonder what happened, to them. So it sounds like great information, for someone to learn and have out there. And maybe just like details wise, what does it look like to sign up for your course? And yeah, what is the commitment, I guess, there, and the
Yeah, yeah,
modules,
sure.
etc.
I mean, firstly, to say that, we do loads of education stuff for nothing. So we're all over YouTube, we're all over LinkedIn, we're always sharing like cheat sheets and downloads. And we do a masterclass every 2 weeks on different topics relating to retained, like just soak it all up, and you can learn so much. Loads of people, we do a podcast too, and we get people contacting us saying, oh, I listened to your podcast and I won my first retainer. And that's what we want. Like, just use all the stuff that we share and it will help you already. If you want to kind of get everything and just be able to go and do it without having to try and piece it all together, then we put everything in a program, and we run a program which is basically a hybrid model. You watch a series of stages through video, all of the downloads and all the materials, terms of business, the proposal templates, pitch decks, everything all comes with it, and you get that as you go along. And we have live coaching every week. So each week you watch a little section, you get the material with that section, and then you attend a live coaching session with
Mm.
us. And you can take it at your own pace. We suggest that you do it over 8 weeks. And then you get 12 months kind of wraparound support where you can just come in and go, I've got this situation, what do you think? And
Mm.
so you generally need more than just the nuts and bolts. You'll need a bit of, because it's a lot of it is situational. You'll have existing clients that are in a certain situation that you've got to be
Hmm.
very careful that you don't rock the boat. But once you realise that they can be converted, you want to do it, and you'll probably need a bit of help additionally with how to do that. So we give you all that help as well. So yeah, all you need to do is just book some time in to have a chat, and we'll find out a bit about your situation and what you're doing and whether, it's a good fit or not, and show you around and show you what it's like, and then you can, decide for yourself.
Excellent. Price wise, I don't know if you can, if it's
Yeah,
just like
sure.
one,
Like for a single seat, it's £5,500, which is I don't know
probably
what
close
in
to
Japanese yen.
probably close to 1 million yen or so.
Yeah. Okay. And then for any subsequent seats, it's 2,950. So there's quite a significant reduction when people will put teams. We work in cohorts of four,
Hmm.
where we put cohorts of teams of four through it. And most people see like you win one retainer, and we talk about, there's so many people that have done it now. I mean, we've trained about, well, over 1,000 people,
Wow.
hundreds and hundreds of testimonials on the website now, and loads of people you can just reach out to and say what it was it done for you. But even if you were to just get a set of terms for retain, for example, we pay Brabner's £3,500. So what's that? Maybe 750,000 yen just for a robust set of retained terms, which you get, you can download that on day one. So
Hmm.
it's pretty valuable, the training.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you get the terms and conditions just like a
You get
contract that then
everything.
you can
There's
use
nothing that you'll
anytime, and
need that
then
we don't give you. Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely everything.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're the right person to learn from. Maybe at this
Bless
point, the
you.
only person to learn from, as well.
Maybe,
But
maybe.
yeah, I really appreciate what you're doing. It's clear that you're good at it, and that you enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so definitely anyone who's listening out there, I have some, some people who I talk to, some clients that might be keen on this as well. So definitely happy
Absolutely love to have a
to
chat.
speak to them. I'm curious, I guess this last question, it's kind of opening it up again, but would
Yeah,
you
that's fine.
say that this is something that like a one man shop, there's some companies out there that are just employing people as contractors and they don't have any resources like in terms of support staff to do resourcing for them, etc., versus big companies that have tons of resources and people that can go out and source candidates. Do you see that it fits better for one of these two, or does it work for both? Is it slightly different?
Yeah, no, we get both. So
Okay.
we have about 20 to 30% of our work is done with what we call IRC, so independent recruiters or one-man
Mm-hmm.
bands or solopreneurs, that are typically leaning on external resource or a researcher, contracted researcher, and they do really, really well with it. And they do it for different reasons. Normally that's more of a lifestyle, and it's about
Mm-hmm.
working on positions that they enjoy working on, that they've got a good partnership with the client, they've got committed clients. And actually the impact that it has normally is they end up going up the value chain. The confidence and clarity in their process and their offering starts to grow, and they start to get a seat at the table, and not coincidentally for the bigger fees. And most of the people that in that camp tend to gravitate in that direction. And we have a foundation program that gets people there, but then we also have a mastermind program. And there are many of our independent recruiters that end up at executive levels and joining the mastermind program for that reason. But also equally, we'll do firms with several teams, and we'll run, 3 lots of groups of 4 or more through the training. And they're, the one we're doing at the moment is a global firm, NES. They're about 3,000 strong globally, and we're on about the 4th team for them at the moment. They're in the hundreds of thousands of revenue for retained now. Yes, either. Don't be, partly, don't be thinking that it won't work for you, because yes, we can point you in the direction of both of those examples. But also it's easy. It's another one of those barriers that kind of people can use, a bit like, oh, it won't work in my market, or it won't work in my discipline, because I'm in finance, or I'm in, legal. That's another one, and actually one of Paul Cochran, just legal. He's in our mastermind group. So he's fully
Nice.
retained, and he's another one that's done the foundation course and gone, oh my God, where have you been all my life?
Hmm.
And he's in legal, and lots of people say, well, it can't be done in legal. Well, yes, it can. So it's another one of those barriers. It doesn't matter whether you're on your own. It doesn't matter whether you're one of many. There's no barrier there for you.
Nice. Well, if I ever go back to recruitment, I would definitely do retained, not
Yeah,
contingency.
yeah,
Just from the stories I've heard from people, it sounds like the better option by far.
yeah.
But thank you, yeah, for sharing your wisdom on this. And
It's a
I'll
pleasure.
put a link to your LinkedIn and the Retrained Search website as well for
Bless you.
people to check that out, and the free resources just starting there. Yeah,
Bless you. Thank you very much, Levi. If there's anything I can help you or your listeners with, please don't hesitate to reach out.
for sure.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, likewise. All right. What did you think? Are you convinced that retained is the way of the future? And if so, if you're interested, again, you can look in the description for a link, or schedule a chat with Louise and let her know that you saw my podcast, and you'll get 10% off. And I will get a very small referral bonus as well. So I hope that this helps to elevate your recruitment game in one way or another. All the best.